Dr. Morgan stood before the large observation window in the New Meridian Research Station and looked out at the vast darkness of space. The colony orbited a distant planet that humans called Seven. The planet was nothing special at first sight, just a rocky world with deep valleys and high mountains. But beneath the surface lay secrets that nobody had discovered in thousands of years. Was a scientist. She had spent her entire life studying ancient civilizations and their forgotten technologies. She came to New Meridian because the evidence was clear. Something old and powerful lay beneath this planet's crust, something that demanded investigation and study. Her team consisted of 30 skilled researchers, engineers, and security personnel. They lived and worked inside metal structures that protected them from the harsh environment outside. The colony had food, water, power generators, and communication equipment. Everything they needed to survive and do their work. Everything they needed to call for help if things went wrong. 3 days ago, they found it. The ruins were massive and ancient. Carved into solid rock, the structures extended down into the planet's depths like the veins of some sleeping creature. Touched the cold stone walls and felt a strange vibration. It was faint, but it was there. Something was moving beneath the surface. Her assistant, Dr. Robert King, appeared at her side. He was younger than maybe 30 years old. His face showed worry. His hands held a data tablet filled with information that made no sense. "The readings are getting stronger," Robert said. His voice was quiet. "Every hour the energy levels increase. It is like something is waking up down there, something very big and very powerful." Took the tablet and studied the numbers. Robert was right. The energy signatures were increasing at a steady rate. In 24 hours, they had increased by 40%. At this rate, they would reach critical levels in less than a week. Knew what had to be done. She walked to the main communications station and found Lieutenant Sarah Brooks working at the controls. Sarah was a communications specialist. She could send signals through space to reach distant stations, ships, and the Galactic Council itself. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, checking every frequency and every backup system. "Send the distress signal now," told her. "Send it to everyone. The local colonies, the deep space relay stations, and the Galactic Council. Tell them what we found. Tell them what is happening here." Sarah began working immediately. She recorded this message and broadcast it across every communication channel available to humans. The message was urgent. The message was clear. Humans on New Meridian needed help. Millions of kilometers away, the signal traveled through the darkness of space. It passed dead planets and empty asteroids. It crossed vast distances where nothing lived and nothing moved. But the signal was strong and clear. When it reached the Galactic Council station, every alien species heard it. The council chamber was a massive room built by the Eye 10,000 years ago. Representatives from dozens of advanced species sat in that room. They were tall and elegant, their skin blue like the sky of their home world. The Eye were shorter and broader with thick armor-like skin. The collective sent artificial beings, machines with consciousness and intelligence. And there were many others, dozens of species, all gathered to discuss the safety and peace of the galaxy. When the human distress call came through, a named ambassador listened carefully. The message was clear. The message was desperate. The message asked for immediate help. Stood and spoke to the council. "The humans are requesting assistance. Their colony is in danger. We should send a rescue mission immediately." The Eye representative made a low sound that meant disagreement. "The humans are primitives they come from Earth, a planet with extreme weather, dangerous animals, and harsh conditions. Such a world produces unstable and unreliable beings. How can we trust their observations? They probably misunderstood the readings. They probably saw nothing important." The representative from the collective, a machine called Reasoning Unit 7, processed the information. "Analysis shows that humans are technologically inferior to all council species. They have been spacefaring for less than 300 years. Their scientific instruments may be faulty. Their interpretation of data may be incorrect. Recommendation: wait for additional evidence before committing resources." Tried again, "But they are asking for help. We have the ability to send ships. We have the ability to save lives. Should we not do this?" "No," said firmly. "We should not. The humans must learn to solve their own problems. If we rescue them every time they get into trouble, they will never develop into a true civilization. They will become dependent on the advanced species. This is not good for the galaxy." The council voted on the request for help. The vote was unanimous. They decided to deny the distress call. They decided that humans were not worth the resources needed for rescue. They decided to ignore the problem and hope it would go away. Nobody knew that Captain Hayes was listening to this conversation from his ship in deep space. Commanded the DSV Intrepid, a human warship built with human technology and human courage. His communications officer, Lieutenant Sarah Brooks, had picked up the Council's transmission by accident. She heard every word. She heard the rejection. She heard the dismissal. She heard the decision to let humans die. Was a military officer. He had spent 20 years serving human interests in deep space. He had faced alien pirates, navigated through dangerous cosmic phenomena, and led his crew through situations that seemed impossible. He was not a man who gave up easily. He was not a man who accepted defeat. When he heard that the Galactic Council had rejected the distress call from New Meridian, something changed inside him. Made a decision in that moment. A decision that would change everything. A decision that would shake the foundations of galactic politics. He turned to his first officer, Commander James Lynch, and spoke with absolute certainty in his voice. "Plot a course for New Meridian, maximum speed. We are going to save those people, and we are going to do it without permission from the Council." Lynch nodded. He did not hesitate. He did not question the decision. Lynch was a true officer and a true human. He understood what it meant to leave people behind. He understood that some things were more important than Council rules. The journey through space took 14 days. Captain Hayes stood on the bridge of the Intrepid and watched the darkness pass before him. His crew worked steadily at their stations, monitoring sensors and checking every system on the ship. The vessel hummed with energy as it traveled faster than the human ships were originally designed to go. Chief Engineer David Foster had pushed the engines to their absolute limits. Foster came to the bridge and reported to with frustration and determination in his eyes. "Captain, the engines cannot take much more of this stress. We are running at 120% of maximum safe capacity. We might make it to New Meridian, but we cannot run at this speed for much longer. If we push harder, we risk catastrophic failure." Understood the danger. He also understood necessity. "Keep them running, Chief. We will reach New Meridian in 4 days. After that, the engines can rest." Meanwhile, on New Meridian, the situation was becoming desperate. Dr. Morgan stood in the research station's main control room and watched the readings on the screens. The energy signatures from beneath the planet's surface were not just increasing. They were exploding outward like a volcano about to erupt. Commander Ford was the head of security at the colony. He was a military man, strong and experienced, with a face that showed every harsh decision he had ever made. He approached with bad news written across his face. "The underground structures are beginning to move," he said. "Our seismic sensors are detecting massive vibrations. Whatever is down there, it is waking up fast. We need to evacuate immediately." Shook her head. "We need more time to understand what is happening. If we leave now, we leave behind years of research and data. We leave behind knowledge that could help us understand this threat." "Then the knowledge will die with us," Ford replied bluntly. "Because if we do not evacuate now, we will not survive what is coming." Made the decision to evacuate, but not to abandon. She ordered her team to gather all research data, all recorded information, and all evidence of what they had found. They packed servers full of digital files and physical samples into reinforced containers. Then they prepared to move everyone into the underground bunkers that had been built years ago as emergency shelters. The bunkers were deep. They went down into the bedrock far below the colony's surface structures. They were designed to protect the colonists from whatever threats might exist outside. They had food stored for emergencies. They had air filtration systems and water recycling equipment. They were meant to keep people alive for weeks if necessary. But as the colonists moved toward the bunkers, the ground began to shake violently. The structures that humanity had built to explore the planet began to collapse. Metal walls twisted and fell. Glass shattered and rained down like sharp water. The evacuation became a desperate race against disaster. Commander Ford led teams of security personnel to help the scientists and support staff move quickly to safety. They carried equipment and samples and people who could not move fast enough. Ford himself picked up and carried her toward the bunker entrance when she was knocked down by a falling piece of wall. The ground opened up in places, showing the ancient structures beneath the surface. Massive mechanical devices activated after thousands of years of dormancy. Defense systems that had been created by a civilization long dead began to move again. They recognized the colony's structures as foreign objects. They recognized the humans as intruders. Plasma beams shot up from deep underground and struck the colony buildings with perfect accuracy. Each blast was powerful enough to vaporize a building in seconds. The research station where it stood just minutes before was completely destroyed in a flash of brilliant energy. The last colonist entered the bunker as the world above descended into chaos. The massive metal doors sealed shut. The bunker systems activated, showing on the displays inside that the surface above was completely destroyed. The colony that had taken years to build was gone in less than an hour. And Ford took account of survivors. They had 123 people alive in the bunkers. Out of the 153 colonists who had started the morning, 30 were dead. The losses were terrible, but the majority had survived. Activated the communication systems in the bunker and tried to send a message to the colony's automated systems. She hoped that something was still functioning that could broadcast a distress call. The systems were damaged, but they still worked. The signal went out again. The plea for help went out into the darkness of space. "How long can we survive in here?" asked Commander Ford. Her voice was tired but still determined. Ford checked the supply inventory on a tablet. "The air filtration will last for 3 weeks if we are careful. The water systems will work for 2 weeks. The food supplies are enough for 9 days with careful rationing. After that, we will have water and air but no food. We can survive for approximately 14 days total if we restrict everything to minimum levels." Did the mathematics in her head. She looked at Commander Ford and spoke quietly. "We need rescue within 14 days. If nobody comes in 14 days, we all die down here in this metal tomb." Ford nodded. "Then we hope that someone is coming. We hope that the distress call reached someone who cares enough to help." Neither of them knew that somewhere in the darkness of space, Captain Hayes was pushing his ship and his crew toward them at impossible speeds. Neither of them knew that a human warship was racing across the void with the intention of saving them. Neither of them knew that the Galactic Council's rejection had not stopped one man's determination to do what was right. Days passed in the darkness of the bunker. The colonists heard explosions and crashes above them, sounds of the ancient defense systems destroying everything they detected. Tried to rest, but sleep was difficult. She kept thinking about the knowledge that had been lost, the discoveries that had been destroyed, and the people who had died before they could reach safety. Commander Ford organized work teams. Some people worked on repairing damaged equipment. Others worked on making the bunker more comfortable. Everyone worked on staying alive and maintaining hope. Ford knew that hope was just as important as food and water. Without hope, people would give up. Without hope, they would die even if rescue came. On the bridge of the DSV Intrepid, Captain Hayes received the new transmission from New Meridian. The second distress signal. The message that told him the colony had been attacked. The message that told him people were dying while the galaxy did nothing. Made a decision. He would do more than rescue them. He would make sure that the Galactic Council under the DSV Intrepid burst through the void with its 3 escort ships trailing behind like hunters closing in on prey. Captain Hayes stood on the bridge and watched the tactical display show the chaos around New Meridian. The planet was surrounded by massive structures made of metal and stone. These structures moved with mechanical precision, firing energy weapons at anything that appeared to be a threat. The colony's orbital defense platforms were fighting back, but they were losing the battle. Pressed a communication button and spoke to his crew. "Battle stations, all crew to battle stations. We are going into combat. Engineering, push the engines to absolute maximum. Weapons, prepare to fire on the primary target. This is our moment. This is when we show what humans can do." The crew responded instantly. They had trained for combat, but none of them had expected to face something this big, this powerful, this alien. The defense structures around New Meridian were the size of small cities. They fired weapons that turned entire sections of the sky into burning plasma, but did not hesitate. He did not order retreat. He ordered advance. The Intrepid's weapon systems came online. The ship was built for exploration, but it carried military capabilities. Missiles launched from the hull and streaked toward the nearest defense structure. The escort ships added their own fire to the assault. Energy beams cut through space and struck the ancient machinery with explosive force. The defense structures responded by turning their weapons toward the human ships. The battle became a desperate dance of attack and evasion. The Intrepid took direct hits that shook the entire vessel. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. Fire erupted in several compartments, but kept the ship advancing, kept the weapons firing, kept moving toward the colony. Lieutenant Sarah Brooks, the communications officer, received a transmission from the surface. The voice that came through the speakers was weak and broken with static. It was Dr. Morgan. "Intrepid, this is New Meridian. We are alive. We are in underground bunkers. We cannot come to the surface. The defense systems are destroying everything. We have approximately 9 days of food remaining. We need immediate help." Replied instantly. "New Meridian, this is Captain Hayes of the DSV Intrepid. We are here. We are fighting to disable the defense systems. Patch your sensor data to our systems. We need to know the weak points of these structures. We need to know how to shut them down." For the next hour, Dr. Morgan and her team transmitted everything they had learned about the ancient structures. They provided specifications, energy patterns, and defensive weaknesses. It was the information needed. It was the data that would save lives. Then another ship appeared. It dropped out of faster-than-light travel and took up a position between the Intrepid and the defense structures. It was a diplomatic vessel from the Galactic Council. The ship's communication systems opened up immediately. Ambassador's voice was cold and formal. "Captain Hayes, I am ordering you to cease your military operations immediately. You are violating established protocols and endangering a Council diplomatic mission. Stand down your weapons and withdraw from this sector." Heard the order, but he did not follow it. He understood what was happening. The Council was protecting its own interests, not the interests of humanity. The Council wanted to study the situation. The Council wanted to observe and analyze. The Council did not want a human military officer making decisions. "Ambassador," responded, his voice steady and strong, "I am not under Council authority. I am under human authority. I am under the authority of Earth's government and the human colonies. I have authority to defend human lives. I am using that authority now." "Then you are declaring war against the Galactic Council," said, his voice full of warning and threat. Did not respond to that threat. Instead, he gave new orders to his crew. "Ignore the diplomatic vessel. Execute attack pattern Delta. All ships focus fire on the primary defense structure. We are shutting this thing down right now." The battle intensified. The human ships attacked with coordinated precision. The escort ships drew the defense structure's fire while the Intrepid moved into position. The primary defense structure was clearly the control hub. If they could destroy it, the others might shut down automatically. Meanwhile, on the surface, Commander Ford led a team of security personnel on a dangerous mission. They had to reach the main control hub of the defense system. They had to plant explosives that could disrupt the power distribution network. It was a suicide mission, but Ford and his team did not hesitate. They moved through tunnels that had been carved out by ancient hands. They climbed down into depths where no human had ever been. They avoided the automated defense systems by using the data that had sent them. They saw evidence of the civilization that had built these structures, and they understood the scale of what they were fighting against. The control hub was a massive chamber, walls of metal covered in strange symbols and devices. In the center was a core of glowing energy that powered everything around it. Ford and his team had maybe 10 minutes before they were detected, maybe less. They worked frantically to place the explosives at key points. The explosives were designed to overload the power distribution system. They were designed to cascade failure through the entire structure. They were the only weapon they had. Above them in space, the battle raged on. The Intrepid took another hit that damaged the shield generators. The ship was losing armor plating with each passing minute. Chief Engineer David Foster pushed the engines harder, moving the ship into a better firing position. Foster knew the ship was being torn apart, but he kept the power flowing. He kept the engines running. He kept the Intrepid fighting. Watched the tactical display and made calculations. His ship could fire on the main defense structure for approximately 4 more minutes before the damage became too severe to continue. 4 minutes was all he needed. 4 minutes was when everything would change. Ford and his team activated the explosives. They ran. They ran through tunnels that were beginning to shake from the impacts of the space battle above them. They ran as the ground beneath their feet cracked and shifted. They ran toward the surface. Counted down in his head, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. He gave the final order. "All weapons, full power, fire everything at the primary structure, now." The Intrepid unleashed everything it had. Every missile, every energy beam, every weapon on the ship fired at the same moment. The primary defense structure took the hits and began to fail. The DSV Intrepid hung in orbit above New Meridian like a broken bird with damaged wings. The ship had taken severe punishment during the battle. 30% of the hull was compromised. 3 crew members were dead, their bodies now stored in the ship's cold storage facility. 7 others were in the medical bay with injuries that required surgery and recovery time. Chief Engineer David Foster had managed to keep the core systems functioning, but barely. The ship needed repairs. The crew needed rest. The vessel would fly again, but not today. Captain Hayes sat in the medical bay and received treatment for his own injuries. A piece of shrapnel from an explosion had cut across his shoulder, and medical officers were cleaning and bandaging the wound. Refused pain medication. He wanted to remain alert. He wanted to monitor the situation as it developed. The escape pods launched from New Meridian's bunker complex. Dr. Morgan and the 123 colonists rose up toward the waiting Intrepid. The rescue shuttle descended to meet them and brought them aboard the warship in groups. They were exhausted, dirty, and traumatized, but they were alive. And Commander Ford made their way to the bridge. They wanted to see and thank him personally. They wanted to understand what had happened and why this captain and his crew had come to save them when the entire Galactic Council had abandoned them. Stood to greet them. His shoulder was still bleeding slightly through the bandage, but his eyes were sharp and focused. Dr. Morgan, Commander Ford, I am glad you are safe, said. His voice was calm and controlled, but underneath was strength and determination. Your team provided crucial information that allowed us to disable those defense systems. Your courage saved lives. Shook her head slowly. Your courage saved lives, Captain. We sent a distress call to the Galactic Council. They rejected it. They said humans were not worth the resources required for rescue. They left us to die. You came anyway. You risked your ship and your crew. You violated Council orders. Why? Looked at her directly. Because people were dying. Because leaving you to die would make me complicit in your deaths. Because some things are more important than Council orders. Humanity is worth saving. Every human life matters. That is why we came. Before could respond, the communication systems came to life. Ambassador was hailing the Intrepid. His voice came through the speakers, formal and official and full of anger. Captain Hayes, I am formally charging you with violation of Council protocols, unauthorized military action, endangerment of a Council diplomatic mission, and violation of intergalactic law. You will surrender command of your vessel immediately and prepare yourself for arrest and tribunal. Council enforcement ships are being dispatched to your location. Cooperate with my authority, and your punishment will be minimal. Did not argue. He simply replied, I understand the charges, Ambassador. I also understand that I saved the lives of 123 humans and destroyed a threat to this sector. I would make the same decision again if I had to. His eyes widened as she understood what was happening. Ambassador, she said, stepping forward where the communication camera could capture her image. I need to make a statement to the Council. I was head of the research station on New Meridian. I can verify what happened here. Acknowledged her. Dr. Morgan, provide your statement to my communications officer. It will be recorded and transmitted to the Council. Spoke with the clarity and authority that years of scientific work had given her. She described how the Galactic Council had rejected their distress call. She described the destruction of the colony and the loss of 30 people. She described how Captain Hayes had arrived and saved the remaining colonists despite explicit orders from the Council not to intervene. Then revealed information that changed everything. During our research, we discovered evidence that these defense structures are not isolated phenomena. The ancient precursor civilization that built them created a network. We found indications that similar structures exist in at least 4 other star systems within this sector. The Council was not investigating these locations. The Council was not preparing for these threats. Either the Council knew about these threats and kept this information secret, or the Council deliberately ignored evidence that it was presented with. The communication channel went silent for a long moment. Its accusation hung in the digital space between planets like a weapon that had just been fired. His voice when he spoke again was different. It was cautious and careful. Dr. Morgan, those are serious accusations. Do you have evidence to support these claims? Yes, responded. We can transmit all our data to your vessel. You can verify everything yourself. The question is whether the Council wants to know the truth or whether the Council wants to maintain its comfortable lies. On the bridge of the Intrepid, watched the tactical display. Council enforcement ships were indeed approaching from multiple directions. They would arrive in approximately 4 hours. Knew he had approximately 4 hours to prepare, 4 hours to decide what he would do when the Council came to take him into custody. Commander Ford stepped closer to, "What do we do, Captain? Do we run? Do we fight? Do we surrender?" Shook his head. "We do neither. We hold our position. We make sure that the Council understands what is happening here. We make sure that the humans are safe. After that, what happens to me does not matter." The next 3 hours were tense. The wounded on the Intrepid were treated. The colonists were given food and water and clean clothing. Dr. Morgan worked with a team of technical specialists to prepare a comprehensive data presentation about the precursor structures and what they meant for galactic security. Then the Council enforcement ships arrived. 7 massive vessels that dwarfed the human warship formed a semicircle around the Intrepid. They had weapons that could destroy the human ship in seconds, ordered his crew to stand down. No weapons, no aggressive moves, just passive defense. Ambassador arrived on a shuttle. He docked with the Intrepid and came aboard with a security detail, met him in the airlock. The two figures stood facing each other, representing 2 different approaches to justice and responsibility. "Captain Hayes, I am placing you under arrest," announced officially. Offered no resistance. He allowed the security detail to place restraints on his wrists. He allowed himself to be taken into custody, but before they led him away, he spoke one final statement. "I am a human officer. I made a human decision based on human values. If that is a crime, then I accept the punishment. But I did what was right. History will remember it that way, and no council tribunal can change that truth." They took to a detention cell in the diplomatic vessel. Dr. Morgan and Commander Ford watched from the window as their rescuer was led away. They watched the human captain accept his fate with courage and dignity. They understood that it sacrificed his freedom for their lives. Turned to Ford. "We need to make sure this means something. We need to make sure sacrifice changes something. We need to present the evidence about the precursor network to the full council. We need to show them that was right. We need to show them that humans are worth saving." Commander Ford nodded. "Then we do it. We present the evidence. We tell the truth. We make sure that justice is as the tribunal chamber was vast and circular. The floor was polished stone brought from a dozen different worlds. Above, the ceiling displayed the stars and the darkness of space. The representatives from the Galactic Council sat in tiered rows around the chamber. Machines, and dozens of other species all gathered to witness this trial. This trial was not just about Captain Hayes. This trial was about the future of the Galactic Council itself. Captain Hayes stood at the center of the chamber. He was no longer in detention. He was standing free in the presence of his judges. His uniform was cleaned and repaired. His face showed no fear, only resolve and quiet strength. The prosecutor was a tall named. He had been assigned to argue that had violated council law and should face severe punishment. Believed in order and rules and the proper operation of established systems. He did not believe in exceptions, even for humans who claimed moral justification. Presented his case carefully. He showed evidence of the council orders that had violated. He presented documentation of the protocols that the human captain had ignored. He argued that if the council allowed individuals to ignore direct orders based on personal moral judgment, the entire system would collapse into chaos. Captain Hayes acted without authority, concluded. He acted against explicit orders from this council. He endangered a diplomatic mission. He created a military conflict that could have resulted in catastrophic consequences. The punishment for such actions must be severe. It must demonstrate that the council's orders cannot be ignored, regardless of the circumstances. Then it was time for the defense to present their case. Dr. Morgan stood to speak. Her voice carried authority and moral clarity that came from witnessing death and survival. "The council rejected our distress call," she said simply. "We were dying. We sent a message asking for help. The council chose to ignore it. Captain Hayes chose to listen. Captain Hayes chose to act. That is not a crime. That is a moral choice that any truly civilized society should celebrate." She presented the evidence about the ancient precursor structures. She showed data indicating that similar structures existed in multiple star systems. She asked a question that hung in the chamber like a judge's gavel striking against stone. How many other colonies has the Council abandoned? How many other human settlements has the Council left to die? And more importantly, how many members of this Council knew about the precursor threat and chose not to warn the human colonies? The chamber erupted in sound and motion. Representatives from different species began arguing among themselves. The I representative, who had voted to reject the distress call, began demanding that the evidence be dismissed as unreliable. The collective called for an independent investigation. Representatives from smaller species who had never held real power in the council began demanding that the organization be reformed. Commander Ford stood next and provided testimony about the evacuation and the desperate fight for survival in the bunkers. He described how the colony's security team had worked with military personnel to disable the precursor defense systems. He made clear that human courage and human ingenuity had been essential to survival. Without human action, all 123 colonists would have died. Then the collective representative, Reasoning Unit 7, provided analysis that shifted the entire debate. The machine presented data showing that over the past 200 years, the Galactic Council had rejected distress calls from 27 different human colonies. In each case, the justification had been identical. Humans were too primitive. Humans were too unreliable. Humans were and therefore not worthy of Council protection. This pattern represents systematic discrimination, the machine stated with cold logic. By every measure that the Galactic Council uses to evaluate civilizations, humans have been given unequal treatment. Humans have been equal protection under galactic law. Captain Hayes' actions represent a correction to this injustice, not a violation of law. The debate continued for hours. Species that had never questioned the Council's authority began questioning it now. Species that had always followed the established order began demanding reform. The foundations of the Galactic Council were being examined and found wanting. Finally, Captain Hayes was invited to make a statement. He moved to the center of the chamber. He looked at all the representatives gathering above him. He spoke with the voice of someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. "I am a human," he began. "I come from a cold Earth. My world is harsh. My world produces strong people, but my world also taught me something that advanced civilizations seem to have forgotten. My world taught me that life has value, that every person matters, that sacrifice for others is the highest honor." He paused and looked directly at. The I representative said that humans must learn to solve their own problems. He was right. We did solve our own problems. We did not wait for the council. We acted. We saved ourselves. And in the process, we proved that we are not primitives who need council protection. We are equals. We deserve equal treatment and equal respect. Continued. I violated council orders because those orders were unjust. I violated council protocol because that protocol was immoral. I saved human lives because that is what any rational, moral civilization does. The question for this council is simple. Will the council now become a true community of equals, or will the council continue its pattern of discrimination and abandonment? The vote was called. The question was whether Captain Hayes had committed crimes against the Galactic Council, or whether he had acted in accordance with universal principles of justice and mercy. The vote was not unanimous, and 2 other representatives voted to convict, but the majority voted to acquit. More than that, the majority voted to formally recognize Hayes as having acted in defense of vulnerable beings. More than that, the council voted to establish an investigation into past instances of discrimination against human colonies. The tribunal declared innocent of all charges. The chamber erupted in celebration. Dr. Morgan embraced, tears streaming down her face. Commander Ford shook his hand firmly. The representatives from dozens of species approached to express their support. Then Ambassador made a formal announcement. The Galactic Council is prepared to implement significant reforms. We are establishing a coalition force to locate and neutralize all remaining precursor structures in the galaxy. Captain Hayes is appointed as commander of this coalition. Representatives from all member species will serve under his authority. Morgan was appointed as the chief scientific advisor to the coalition. Commander Ford was promoted to admiral and given command of the human fleet that would join the coalition forces. Dr. Robert King was asked to lead a research initiative to study and understand the precursor technology. The DSV Intrepid was repaired and upgraded with technology provided by all the council species working together. The ship was refitted as the flagship of the coalition fleet. stood on the bridge of his restored vessel and looked at a tactical display showing ships from a dozen different worlds. Ships that were now united under human command. Reflected on the journey that had brought him here. A journey that began with a rejected distress call and a simple choice to do what was right. A journey that had changed the course of galactic history. "Set course for the next precursor site," ordered his crew. "We have work to do, we have threats to neutralize, we have a galaxy to protect." The Intrepid and the Coalition fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel together. The void that had seemed empty and indifferent now held the promise of cooperation and unity. Humanity had proved itself as equals among the stars. The galaxy would never underestimate again. Stood at the observation window and watched the space around him. He thought about the 3 crew members who had died saving New Meridian. He thought about the 30 colonists who had not made it to the bunkers. He thought about the cost of doing what was right. It had been high, but it had been worth it. Somewhere in the galaxy, other human colonies continued their work. They knew that they were no longer abandoned. They knew that humanity had a champion in the highest levels of galactic civilization. They knew that one captain and one crew had changed everything. The void had answered. The darkness had been filled with the light of human courage and human determination, and the galaxy would never be the same. They began the process of preparing their case. They knew that was in a detention cell, waiting for a trial that would determine his fate. They knew that they had to work quickly. They knew that they had to convince the Galactic Council that saving humans was not a crime. It was a moral imperative. 4. Below, Ford's explosives detonated. The power distribution system collapsed. The cascade failure began. The primary defense structure exploded in a brilliant flash of light. For a moment, the entire sector was illuminated by the blast. Then the other structures began to shut down. One by one, their power sources cut off by the cascade failure spreading through the control network. The battle was over. The structures were silent. New Meridian was safe. To what its neglect had cost. He would make sure that humanity was never again dismissed and discarded as unworthy of protection. The DSV Intrepid changed course. The ship increased velocity. The 3 escort ships that traveled with followed immediately. They were heading into the darkness of space, heading toward danger and uncertainty, heading toward a mission that might get them all killed. But they were heading toward hope for the people on New Meridian. They were heading toward a choice that would matter.